We're going to kick off with our first talk of the day. This can be a tough position to be in, but I know it won't be for Fiona because you're all going to be really loud. Welcome her down here with a lot of applause. And we're going to kick off. So, first talk of the day. Come on down, Fiona.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Should I just carry? Hello. My talk is about leading a sort of small and developing team, specifically a data team. I want to talk to you first about why I'm giving this talk, and that is because until relatively recently, I had always been a part of sort of mature data teams. So that is kind of data teams that already had pre-existing processes, they had all of their tooling selected, and they had quite a lot of people in their team as well. And then sort of about a year and a half ago, I joined Gearset as a data team lead. And that was sort of a smaller, more emerging data team. And that presented a slightly different set of challenges, which I found really interesting. So I wanted to tell all of you about it. Just to introduce myself, I'm Fee, as I say, the data team lead at Gearset. And I'm not presenting on my own today. I do technically have a co-presenter, and it's on theme because he's small and mighty. It is my cat, Percy. He'll be popping up throughout the slides. So just to go over what we're going to cover, I'm going to first just talk a little bit about what I mean by a data team. Then I'm going to talk through my career history so far to give a little bit of context to me. And then I'll talk about some challenges that are common in sort of small and developing data teams. And then I'm going to give some top tips for things that we have implemented at Gearset that have worked really well for us. And then I'll wrap up at the end by kind of just going through what we've talked about today. So firstly, what is a data team? So can you put your hands up if you work in a company with a data team or you've interacted with a data team before? Ah, cool. So quite a lot of people, yeah. But for those who don't know, a data team kind of exists to kind of bring together various different disparate data sources that exist across a business and bring them all together into one place, sort of generally a sort of centralized data warehouse. And then to sort of model that data and make it more consumable, testing on top so that it's reliable, and then share that data out to the wider business so that they have access to it and they can trust it, sort of either by being able to access that sort of central storage data warehouse system or through visualization tools, etc. And then on top of that, the data team kind of produces analytics and insight to not just tell the business how it is performing, what is happening, but also to find opportunities within the data to help a business develop as well. So when I talk about a mature data team, that's what I mean. So I'm going to go through my career history quickly. So my first ever data role was at a company called Screwfix, and they sell tools to sort of DIY people and businesses as well. And I was a customer insight analyst there. And that was my first time kind of understanding how to use data in a commercial environment. And then after Screwfix, I moved on to Dyson. So they make sort of vacuum cleaners and air purifiers and various things with sort of small motors in. And I had quite a few different roles at Dyson, but the one I kind of ended up in was I was managing an insights team within the GB market there. After Dyson, I moved on to Dojo, and if you haven't heard of them before, now that I've told you about them, you're going to see their card terminals everywhere, as I started to after I worked for them. And at Dojo, I was managing a customer success analytics team, which was sort of really interesting because I was getting to work with a lot of operational stakeholders and learn about a lot of customer data. And after Dojo, I moved on to Cinch, which is a sort of online and in-store second-hand car sales company. And at Cinch, I was their head of analytics and insight. So I was looking after analytics across a lot of different business areas. So finance and commercial and customer success and marketing, etc. And that was really interesting for me as well, because it was nice to see how data was used in all of those different areas, and also how it was used kind of more strategically at the kind of exec level of the company too. And that brings me on to my current role, which, as I say, is at Gearset. So just to quickly introduce Gearset, we are a sort of Salesforce DevOps platform, which helps users kind of ship changes to Salesforce more safely and with a lot more confidence and more quickly as well. And Gearset is a sort of engineering-led, product-focused company, which is kind of key context for what it was like to introduce kind of more kind of data team principles into Gearset, because they are very keen on having the right tool for the job, and they're very keen on sort of good processes as well. Which leads me on to when I kind of started my career here at Gearset. So I was really interested in this role. So the data team was kind of spun up as a part of the software engineering team, and they kind of hired a data engineer, and they created really good foundations for the data team within the software engineering team. And they were hiring for a data lead to kind of capitalize on those really good foundations and kind of deliver value on top of that. And it appealed to me because I was really excited to kind of build a team and put my own stamp on something and bring in things that I had seen work well in other data teams. But also I was really interested because, as you've probably noticed in my career history, I had predominantly worked in analytics before, and this role was across kind of engineering and business intelligence and analytics as well. So it was a really good opportunity for me to learn too. So I joined Gearset, and when I joined, we had one data engineer in the team, but pretty soon after I joined Gearset, we also hired up to an analytics engineer as well. So we were a team of 3 people, and pretty soon we started to see challenges which are common to small and evolving data teams. So the first challenge that we came across was establishing legitimacy. So if you are a kind of new data team in a company that has existed for a while, like chances are almost definitely the company is already able to access data in some way. They're already getting the data that they need to kind of do their jobs, which was particularly the case at Gearset because it's a company full of sort of very technically competent people. They were able to write the queries that they needed to pull data, they were able to combine data, and they were able to get to kind of numbers as well to do their jobs, which is fine. But when you don't have kind of a centralized team who are responsible for that data and the accuracy of that data, you do end up in a situation where sometimes if somebody has used a different source to pull something or a slightly different method, those numbers kind of don't always align, which is why you need a data team and a data warehouse to make sure that they always do. Once you have that in place, you kind of need to build visibility and trust. So people don't always know to go to the data team to get the data that they need. Sometimes they're just so used to working without a data team, it kind of doesn't occur to people. Or sometimes because resource is limited, people just sort of don't want to bother you, so they won't ask you for data that they need. And what that can mean is either the data team is sort of cut out from projects that they could be involved in that could really sort of be aided by having data available, or you sort of get into this quite reactive workflow where you're coming into projects quite late, and then you're just kind of quickly trying to react to things that are happening, and that can make it very difficult to prioritize things correctly if you're operating like that for a long time. And then finally, if you have sort of built up the kind of awareness of your team across the company, and you are getting all of these requests in, then as a small team, it can be quite hard to maintain focus, make sure you're making the right priority calls, and make sure you're kind of juggling delivering immediate impact to prove out how useful your team can be, while also sort of making sure that you're creating those foundations that allow you to scale as you want to going forward. So that brings me on to my top tips that I'm going to talk about to address some of these challenges. And all of these top tips, or some of these top tips, are going to have a picture of Percy as well to help kind of illustrate the things that I'm talking about. So my first one is that the foundations really matter. And by foundations for a data team, I mean having a sort of a robust way to ingest data, to store data, to test the data that you have stored, and to kind of create modelling on top of this as well. And I was very lucky because, as I say, I joined a company full of software engineers, and their first hire was a data engineer. So these things were kind of already being set up and already in place when I joined. We had a good data warehouse, we had a good process for ingesting data, we had good tooling for modelling that data, and as I say, because it was a software engineering company, everything was version controlled and lovely. So then, like, once you have this kind of foundational layer created where the data is modelled really nicely and accessible for the business and the numbers are accurate, what you kind of then have to do is raise awareness of what you've got, of the value that that can bring. And here I've got a picture of Percy popping up while I'm trying to watch Great British Bake Off and making me aware that he exists and that I should be paying him attention. And that is actually quite a good metaphor for what you kind of have to do. So we did pop up on Slack quite a lot where we saw projects are being talked about, where we felt that the data team could really add value with the data that we had and the expertise that we could bring. We sort of set up stakeholder sponsors for each different business area. So I would have a person that represented that business area, and I would go to them and I would talk to them and I would say, what are the most important things for you right now? And we would work together to understand how data could help with those things and enable those things for them. Something else that I did is I joined in a sort of company-wide learning session that we have that we run monthly. And I talked about a data warehouse and explained to people what that was and why it was valuable, just to try and get that information out there about what the data team could do. So you've done this, you've built up awareness of the team, that's worked fantastically, you're getting in loads of requests and everybody is really popular, everybody is asking you for things. Problem solved, right? Well, hold your horses, not quite, because once you have started to get all of those requests in, then it can be difficult to sort of manage that workload. So the demand will very quickly outpace the capacity of the team. And that is where prioritization is really important. So we sort of prioritize things in a few ways. One of the things that really helped us, again, was our stakeholder sponsors. So we could go to our stakeholder sponsors and we could say, here is the very big list that we've had in from your business area of all these things that people are asking us for. Does this trump the work that we're already working on for you? Do you think these things are more important? Will they have more impact? We could have a very honest conversation with them about that. And that helped us when we were sort of pushing back on people, because we could say, well, with discussions with your stakeholder sponsor, we do believe that it is most impactful for Gearset to prioritise these things right now, and we'll have to put these things on the backlog or consider them later. And that's not to say that we only deferred to our stakeholder sponsors. We did sort of also obviously know the strategy for Gearset overall, because we're quite a sort of a transparent company, and we knew what we were kind of aiming for as well. So we would try and sort of align our priorities to that too, and make sure that we were all pulling together for the sort of goals of the company. And we also kind of tried to prioritize things that were sort of common requests that we were getting. We tried to amalgamate them into sort of one larger request where we knew that it would sort of answer multiple questions that we were getting in one go, and that would sort of save time for the data team and mean that it would free us up to focus on other things as well. So one example of that is that we were getting lots of different requests for product telemetry data from account managers and renewal managers and marketing teams and customer success managers as well. And we were able to kind of see that while they were all slightly different asks for sort of usage data of Gearset, we could bring all of those asks together into one self-serve tool that would then kind of enable those stakeholders to be able to get access to the data that they wanted. And that is what we did, and that was a success for us. So we launched that, and we have sort of on average 50 unique people who are using that tool every week, and they're sort of repeatedly going into it and using it as well. And we have seen a real reduction in the ad hoc asks that we're getting about that specific data set too. Once you have sort of figured out prioritization, I think frequent stakeholder communication is really important too. So it's okay to deprioritize something that you agreed with your stakeholder that you would work on, and it's okay if something else swings in and is more important and is going to have much more impact for the company. I don't think saying no to things is the thing that erodes trust. I think it's just not explaining to people the decision that has been made and making sure that you're sharing that out in a timely manner. So we tried to get really good at that. We kind of have regular communication with our stakeholders. We run quarterly business reviews where we look at what we said we would deliver in the quarter, what we did deliver, what did go well, what didn't go well, and we'll share that out with our stakeholders and make sure that they're really involved in that process too. Another thing that became very important for us as we started to scale was picking the right data visualization tool. So a data visualization tool for a small team can either be kind of a force multiplier, or it can be a little bit of a bottleneck if the data team gets sort of stuck in creating dashboards for sort of multiple different people across the business and they aren't really being used. It just becomes like a little bit of a dashboard factory. And that was something that we were really keen to avoid, and we had to avoid. We didn't have a choice because there were so few people. We just couldn't afford to be doing that. So what we looked for in a data visualization tool was a really strong semantic layer. So that is a layer in a visualization tool where you have defined all of the metrics that are very commonly reused, and you only have to define those metrics once. Just make sure that your code for them is really strong, and people will always kind of get the same answer when they're querying them. And then once that is defined, that can be reused again and again every single time somebody is querying that data or they're creating a visualization on top of that. Which just frees up so much time for the data team because you just get faster and faster at developing things. So that is the thing that we were really looking for in a visualization tool. And we didn't rush into the decision to pick a visualization tool. We sort of really thought about it. We compared various different tools to make sure that we were choosing the right one for us that would enable us the best, that was the best fit for Gearset and for our team. And once we had figured out the tool that we thought would be the best, then we blocked out 2 weeks where we didn't do any of the work. For those 2 weeks, we just focused on the visualization tool. And in the first week, as a data team, we kind of built out things that we knew would be very useful for the business. So things where we knew that they would answer common questions that were coming up again and again for people, and sort of surface data that people at Gearset were really curious about. So that was the first week. And then in the second week, we had a range of people from across Gearset who had volunteered, not people in the data team, but just sort of from all different business areas, who had volunteered to test that visualization tool. And we gave them sets of questions on the different sort of data sources that we'd surfaced and asked them to do various things using that tool. And only then did we settle on a visualization tool that was best for us. And it was the tool that we had initially selected. We got really good feedback from it. I've got a quote from one of our software engineers above about how much he enjoyed using it and how easy it was for him to use. I did not pay him for this quote. But yeah, there was plenty of others like this, so it made us feel like we had made the right choice. So that kind of brings me on to my next tip, which is promoting self-serve. So here Percy is sat on top of his automatic feeder I bought for him, and this gives him his lunch every day so that he doesn't have to wait for me to remember. He just gets it bang on 12:30 every day. And that kind of removes me as a bottleneck, which is what the data team is trying to do when they're kind of enabling self-serve. They're trying to remove themselves as a bottleneck so that people can get access to the data that they need and the analysis they need to do their jobs. I think that self-serve is something that doesn't just happen even if you have created the tooling. It's something that you have to kind of actively sort of design for. So we put a lot of effort into that as well. An example of where sort of self-serve was very useful for us recently is that we currently have a sort of strategic project going on at Gearset, where the sort of leadership team for that project are across sales and marketing and customer success as well, and also involves the data team. And we had sort of a certain amount of resource to dedicate to this project. And we spent a bit of time up front just creating sort of a self-serve tool so that the leadership team of that project could get access to the data that they needed to run that project and understand its performance over time and sort of figure out what sort of strategic plays they wanted to go after depending on the data. And they've been using that. It's been fantastic. I think the person who's leading that project used our data visualization tool more than I did last week, and I use it a lot, so that's a ringing endorsement for self-serve. But what that has done is that sort of freed up the data team to then be able to focus on the more kind of sort of strategic analytics, which is looking at what the data is suggesting for how we can accelerate this project even further. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't sort of focused on self-serve initially. Something to bear in mind about self-serve is that you have to make sure that your method for accessing data is the most appealing one. So you can see here Percy is ignoring his automatic feeder because there is a burger in front of him, and obviously that is a lot more appealing than the food that comes out of the feeder. And that is sort of true for what can happen if you don't make sure that your path to access the data is the path of least resistance, is the most desirable path for people to access the data that they need. So we made sure of this in a few ways. We have created training that people can sort of go on to. We've sort of created a sort of pre-created training template that they can run through if they want to learn in their own time about our visualization tool and how to use it and how to access these things. We have provided really good documentation and guides to where to get things and little videos that show, you know, how we're using them and how they could use them. We do also have sort of sessions where we will take people through these things and make sure that they're comfortable with using them and comfortable with accessing the data that they need to access. Another tip that I would give is just to make sure that you're sort of honestly reviewing the progress of your team. So as I say, we have these quarterly business reviews that we do, and we've stolen that from our software engineering colleagues. But it's very useful to reflect back on the things that you set out to deliver, how you achieved against those things, and then whether or not you're sort of making sure that you're headed towards the end state that you're really trying to achieve. So for us, becoming this mature data team that is providing all of the value that a mature data team would provide. We also run retrospectives and regularly ask our stakeholders for sort of feedback to make sure that we are, you know, reviewing our progress as we should be, and we're being very honest about it. My final tip is just to make sure that you've got the right people in your team. So within a small team, you have to have excellent people because there really is nowhere to hide. Like, everybody has to pull their weight and be incredibly proactive and innovative. So as I say, we have only 3 people. We have a data engineer, Dave. We have an analytics engineer, Nicola. We have me. And Dave and Nicola are just absolutely fantastic. They're completely brilliant at their jobs. are amazing. And because they are so great, it has meant that we've been able to not rush into hiring more people. I think that it is a kind of trap that you could fall into as a data team, where you're getting more and more demand, and then you hire before you have that foundational kind of self-serve layer in place. And that is what can sort of turn a data team into this dashboard factory that we were so keen to avoid. And because Dave and Nicola have been so excellent, we were able to really hold off on that. And we were able to get those foundations in place. And only once we had the foundations in place, then figure out where we still had a gap that could only be kind of filled by another person in the team. And we have recently sort of come to that conclusion, and we've recently done that analysis. And we have just hired for a product analyst, which is for our team up to 4 people. So we're incredibly excited about that as well. So just to summarise, the first thing I would say is make sure you have really strong tech foundations. Then really focus on your stakeholder awareness. Make sure that you are sort of prioritising the work that is coming in ruthlessly. Focus on stakeholder communication and let them know what you have prioritised and why. And then also make sure that you have the right tooling for the job. So for us, that was our visualization tool was a really important decision that we had to make. Make sure that you're tracking progress and being very honest about that. And finally, make sure that you have the right people in your team. I'll leave that up for a minute because I can see phones going off. Lovely. So that's it from me, but I just wanted to say, if you ever do find yourself sort of having an opportunity to develop a small and an emerging team, I would honestly recommend that you jump at the chance. I've just had the most fantastic time at Gearset so far, and I'm really excited about what we're going to do next in our team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Does anybody have questions? I will also warn, last year we realised that with some of the lights I have literal blind spots. So if you have your hand up and I don't come to you, wave, shout at me if you need to. Eamon, yep, come on.
This is not a planned question. How do you think AI sort of impacts the sort of data team's role, especially one of the things I'm thinking about is Lawrence's request to you last week. How do you think that sort of affects how the team interact and maybe how it affects self-serve?
Eamon is our VP of Engineering at Gearset, for those that don't. Yeah, it's a good question. I think with AI, that foundational semantic layer is still the most important thing. I won't swear, but it's rubbish in, rubbish out, as people tend to say. And there's not a lot that AI can do. It would struggle to get the answers accurate without kind of definitions of the data and explanations about what that data means. So again, because we have built that foundational data layer, it means that now once we try to feed that data into AI, as we are starting to, as a request came in quite recently to connect our data visualization tool to Claude so that people could kind of have another way to self-serve by kind of asking Claude questions and getting back information from various different sources, including data from our data warehouse. Because we have focused on that foundation, I think it's going to make that a lot easier and make sure that people are getting accurate results when they're using those things.
Cool, great answer. And oh yeah, okay, Garth. For those who haven't been here before, this is my exercise for the year, so please do bear with me as I run back and forth and up and down stairs.
First of all, thanks for a great talk. You were talking a lot about self-serve and data visualization. I know in a lot of companies there's a big push to try and make everybody data literate and get as much as they can from the data. Do you think that's actually achievable? Can everybody just become their own data scientist and get meaningful data from the information that they use every day? Or is there like a hard wall, that we'll eventually hit where you need to say, no, we need to bring in a specialist? I mean, people talk a lot about citizen developers. Can we become citizen data scientists, or is that just too far?
That's a good question. I think I'm biased, but I think pretty much everyone is an analyst in their job. I think everybody uses data at some point to make a decision that they need to make about, you know, what their strategy is going to be, or how they can work more efficiently. And I think providing the guardrails for people to be able to do that is really important. So I'm banging on about the semantic layer, but having a foundational layer where people feel a little bit more confident to access data, knowing that they're not going to accidentally get to the wrong number, or sort of, you know, be embarrassed in a meeting because they've quoted the wrong thing or they've interpreted it incorrectly, is kind of foundational for empowering people to be able to do those things. I do think that there is a point at which, when you're sort of then looking at more statistical analysis, it sort of does make sense to bring the data team in, because then they will have those areas of expertise and they can just sort of sense check and make sure that how the data is being interpreted is correctly. But the more we sort of have that layer initially where people can just pull the numbers that they need, the more the data team is freed up to be able to focus on that more sort of statistical analysis.
Cool. Any more? Sweet. I think we're actually safe. Thank you so much, Fiona.
Thank you.